Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Orange Pill Podcast, broadcasting live from these illustrious Orange Pill studios in downtown San Salvador. They're back from their travels abroad. They're in their Bitcoin Orange Pill bunker. Welcome them back, Max and Stacy, everybody. How are your travels? How are you guys doing?
Great. We were at a Swan Salon event 2 nights ago in Miami. Went very well. Met a lot of folks in the Swan community who love Bitcoin and they're stacking hard, and who wouldn't with all this bull market activity and new highs happening.
I want to say that we were in the United States, and the United States does the daylight savings. So importantly, in El Salvador, we don't, because President Bukele is a little bit more decentralized and cool than that. And so we are going to attend the Age of Light tomorrow with Dr. Jack Cruz, who is a resident here in El Salvador. And we were saying to him, usually all these conferences and meetings and meetups and events that we do around the world, anytime we attend a public event, it's usually a Bitcoin event. And we're like the OGs and we know everybody and everything. And this is this is the first I could think of since we attended our very first Bitcoin conference in 2011, that we're the newbies. So we're newbies to this Age of Light. So we're going to see what it is all about.
Yeah, we're going to see what it's about. I'm not exactly sure what the program is all about, but it sounds exciting. So we're going to check it out.
The Age of Light. Just to focus on transforming society, or?
Well, if you have us on next week, Graham, we'll be able to tell you, because as I said, we're newbies. And if you go to Dr. Jack Cruz's Twitter handle, he does tweet a lot about this. And, it's basically the age of, that blue light, all of this light we have around us here in this studio is actually really bad for you. And it's causing a lot of it's manifesting in all our ill health, all the obesity, just all sorts of weird diseases happening across the world. For example, like cancers, they keep on saying these are happening at a younger and younger age. Well, these are part of the reason is the blue lights everywhere, and then we need to get more sunlight. We used to get more sunlight. We used to have less blue lights all around us. And so that's all the extent of my newbie knowledge.
Yeah.
When newbies speak about a topic like this, where there are a lot of experts, you might see a lot of hate under this this live stream. People saying she doesn't know what she's talking about.
That's right. We don't know.
Well, that's the beautiful thing.
We don't know.
That's what's great about Bitcoin is it's kind of new for everybody, and everyone's on their own journey. So there's so many new, everyone. I spoke 2 weeks ago at the Bitcoin meetup in El Zonte, the Bitcoin Beach meetup. And in the audience was a range of people who have been in Bitcoin space for a long time. And then some people were like, we just got here. I just own a little bit of it. I don't know what's going on. We don't know what we're doing. So I think we're all it's a new era. We're breaking the bonds of all of the old ways of thinking, the central banks, all of it.
We're on a pilgrimage, and you meet people on the pilgrimage of all stripes and characters, and they're all heading in the same direction. Hopefully it's a good direction on the pilgrimage, whether it's to Mecca or it could be to Satoshi land, Bitcoin Nirvana, the Bitcoin singularity. I think that's the point, isn't it? We're all facing toward a common goal, but on different speeds, different paths,
It could be to Canterbury as well. That's another option for a pilgrimage, is to go to Canterbury. I don't know if kids these days ever read Canterbury Tales anymore, but it's one of my favorite books ever. It's a very, have you ever read it, Graham? The Canterbury Tales from, with Chaucer?
When I was very, very, a lot younger, so I don't remember much of it. I probably just cliff noted it, to be quite honest.
Exactly. Now they chat GPT it, right?
There's another pilgrimage that starts in Paris and it goes to Spain.
The Santiago.
Oh, yeah.
And this happens during the summer, and a lot of people are on that pilgrimage, and they spend 2 or 3 months on that journey. And I've never done it, but it does sound like a lot of fun as well.
Martin Sheen did a movie based on of a guy that actually did the pilgrimage. That's where I learned about it.
Santiago de Compostela.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Costello, yeah.
that's fascinating. Well, speaking of pilgrimages and journeys that
Yeah.
are happening,
Yeah.
Stacy, I saw your tweet. You put out there, you retweeted that Bukele has now moved all of this Bitcoin, sounds like 5,000 full coins, to cold storage, which it's funny. We were doing the show Wednesday, and I was just me, and I was answering a lot of questions. And again, to the point, there's people in the chat who are very knowledgeable. And then someone's like, "Well, what's a cold wallet? What's a this? What's a that? Why are we?" So both of you retweeted how significant that is. But let's explain to the audience. First of all, it just shows how Bukele was genius, and when he bought Bitcoin and then the price dropped because of the FTX thing, everyone's like, "Oh no, he's gambling," and now we've hit all-time highs. So he's looking even smarter than ever. But explain the significance of a country moving 5,000 Bitcoin, if not more, to cold storage and what that means.
Well, it's historic. This is a really historic event. Like in 1,000 years from now, they'll still talk about this. It was 5,689 gram. Don't, shortchange us. Right?
I just saw that number. I saw 5,000 on Twitter.
So, yeah, this is sovereignty like we've never seen before. Like no nation has been so sovereign and so free as El Salvador is today. And El Salvador is rich. Like the media has had it wrong. The media has said for several years, now 2.5 years, that this would impoverish the nation, that Bitcoin policy and economic liberty would impoverish El Salvador, when in fact it is done the opposite. This is granted the people of El Salvador, the country of El Salvador, sovereignty, which is there's really no price for that, right? That's something that is hard to even quantify, to put a number on what the value of that is. But when you see it, when you see what we have here, it's such a mind-blowing brand, and you can see that in the responses. But Max also had a really great response to President Bukele's tweet announcing that he had moved this 5,689 plus coins to a cold wallet, about the investment grade, and then how the rating agencies will need to rethink their rating on El Salvador.
Yeah, true. So similar to what Michael Saylor is doing over there at MicroStrategy. So he's buying Bitcoin, putting it on the balance sheet that improves his collateral status and ability to float more stock and more bonds to buy more Bitcoin. And then the Bitcoin goes higher, and then he's got more collateral. So he's traded as something of a perpetual motion machine, and he's actually outperforming Bitcoin. And there's no limit really to how far that this can go. They've increased their balance sheet. When they started off, they were worth $2 billion. I think they're worth close to 40 billion now, or something like that. But similarly with El Salvador, so by putting Bitcoin on the reserves of the country, they're improving their collateral base. And so therefore their rating, which is currently below investment grade or junk, interest rates are relatively high. But as they increase their Bitcoin position, the rating will get better and the interest rates will be lower, and they'll be able to borrow more. And with those borrowed funds, they can buy more Bitcoin. So they've done something similar to Saylor, but on a sovereign level. So Bukele is like the sovereign version of the Saylor playbook applied to El Salvador. And that can keep going on for quite some time. So they can become the richest country in Central America, certainly, but one of the richest countries in the world, because most countries have all their strategic reserves in fiat money, and fiat money is collapsing against Bitcoin. So, El Salvador is moving into an excellent position financially speaking.
Yeah, that's the thing that's so amazing is what he's doing for the citizens of El Salvador. He's guaranteeing the wealth of not just the nation, but all of the citizenry. I mean, this is I don't know of any other leader that's done this.
Well, this is a masterclass in governance, good governance, right? And he is not only showing to the world how to be a sovereign nation, but also to the citizens, can now audit him, right? And the government, his government, right? The citizens now have so much more, like when they talk about democracy, when the US talks about democracy and finger wags here, like this is extreme democracy in terms of the people get so much transparency into the government. They could see so much into what the government is doing. How many dollars are there in the world? How much gold is there in Fort Knox, right? Do we know? No. But now everybody in the world, anybody in the world, can audit the treasury of El Salvador, the Bitcoin treasury, and certainly so can the citizens. So they can verify for themselves that all the things that the Reuters and the Bloombergs and the Wall Street Journals of the world have said about El Salvador's, failed Bitcoin experiment, they can verify for themselves that that is FUD. They can verify for themselves that the reports from recently from Barclays that it's also a failure, right? That they could audit. They could look at the number. They can go to the mempool. They could, look on the blockchain and see on chain that we have 5,689 Bitcoin here, and they could say, well, who's right, the 5,689 Bitcoin there, or this research report by somebody who's never been to El Salvador, and they just pull research out of their bottom.
Yeah, I mean, in the States, there's always people saying, audit the Fed, audit Fort Knox. Fort Knox hasn't been audited in almost 100 years or something. It's been an enormous amount of time. The Fed hasn't been audited really in any meaningful time frame. So there's no real knowledge about what is on the Fed's balance sheet or what's in Fort Knox. And so here with El Salvador, you just look and you can see exactly the wallet address, exactly how much Bitcoin they hold. And, the president was tweeting that it's a large chunk of the holdings. And so, more to come. There's more good news in the pipeline. And I think that they understand that this is a way to ratchet up their financial position using this, gaming the system, essentially. So the rating agency, you see, everything can be gamed in your favor. The rating agencies think they're so smart by politicizing the ratings game and saying this country is not investment grade because they don't support what we support. It's a game. The game, it's all politicized. So, but you can always reverse it and game them. So you can use the fact that they've got a lower rating and higher rates to build out essentially a leverage position against them. Because remember, the goal is a speculative attack and fiat money is the victim. And so like Michael Saylor, El Salvador is now on the warpath. We're going to take fiat money down. And so they can play all the games that they want, but they're holding fiat money. So they lose before it starts. And it's just fun to watch. They're like the Craig Wright of fiat money. It's like Jerome Powell and Craig Wright are the same, cut from the same cloth. They're both insanely and ill prepared to deal with life. And this is just going to become more apparent.
Yeah, it's also it's so amazing because it is so transparent and it blows up so many of the, first of all, Bitcoin's only used for criminal activity. Well, no, it's on the blockchain. We can see it. We know where it is. Then it blows up Bukele's a dictator. Tell me one dictator in history that's A, given his citizens a currency of their own, and B, and then says, I'm putting this transparently, the holdings of this country. No king, no dictator has ever done this. They've never. It is a transformative a moment.
He's giving them truth. He's doing the opposite of what totalitarianism is. Totalitarianism tries to gaslight you constantly. They remove the fabric of reality around you. They make you question everything because you doubt everything, and therefore you have no truth at all in your life. And that's why they always memory hole things. They memory hole the past. They rewrite the past. That's why the Google Gemini thing, the AI, they rewrite the past. And that's gaslighting, that's totalitarianism. Whereas he is revealing the truth. He's just giving them the truth of their situation, of the circumstances of their monetary system. Because remember, when he spoke at CPAC, he was so brilliant at articulating the falsity, the illusion of what the dollar is, and what an all fiat system is. That is total illusion. And it's it's really, it is so totalitarian. And what he's describing is that they use violence essentially, through the forcing you to pay taxes or else you'll go to prison, even though it's totally printed out of thin air. Like they're forcing you to believe or say you believe. You don't have to believe, but you have to say you believe that this dollar is worth something. So he's doing the opposite, right? He's not presenting you with an illusion. He's presenting you with truth.
And the other thing too, like Max, you were talking about the audits. There's been no audits, any meaningful audits of the Fed or Fort Knox. Also, I would put the Pentagon in there. Whenever they're audited, rarely it's audited. It's just like, oh wow, huh? Budget? What? They lost $21 trillion. They lost it, which is understandable. I probably have $1 trillion under my bank, my seat cushions in my car. We've all lost $1 trillion here and there.
We've all been there.
We've all. I mean, I probably have $1 trillion in a winter jacket somewhere, just sitting in a pocket. So would that make sense? But this is like, it is, it's an amazing moment in time. And I think they don't know what to do with him because they're all of their tricks aren't working. He's a dictator, wrong. Bitcoin's a scam, wrong. And so, he goes to CPAC, like Stacy just said, and said, oh, taxation is theft because you guys just print everything. So it feels like, it's something you've always said, you can't change Bitcoin, it changes you, that eventually America is just going to have to capitulate. Right?
Cometh the hour, cometh the man. Everything was prepped for the appearance of a hero, essentially, And into the arena walks the President Bukele. The Times were begging for a hero, and he's the hero of our time. They just go through history, and this is the way heroes kind of happen, and this is the way history changes. And we've seen it before. We've seen it in the U.S. before. We've seen it in history. And this is El Salvador's time. They're leading the world out of the fourth turning. They're leading the world out of the fiat money dark ages. They're leading the world out of the criminal mafia global syndicate that are the central banks and the corrupt nation states. And so we're seeing that moment in history. And of course, it's going to be a slow grind until that's ubiquitously understood. But once it is, then you'll have a consciousness-raising experience that will be appreciated greatly by all.
How do you see that consciousness raising? I love when you talk about that. Like, I know we're just getting into fortune telling a little bit, but like America is this monolith that uses this violence. It's a very violent culture. But it feels like there's enough that there are people in America that are like somewhat waking up. I don't know if they will in our lifetimes, but how is that going to happen? I don't know. We're just kind of theorizing here, but how do you see it happening? If it can happen?
Well, it's always like just at the margin, right? You only need 20% of the population, right, to be enlightened. And I think you're already seeing it. Like you see Bitcoin spreading. It's going to hit 20% of the population. And that's all you need, right? Every revolution, that's all you need to shift the entire dynamic of the world. And well, if you look at the global situation, so you have a little country like El Salvador, and we only have 6.5 million people, but 92% of them already shifted consciousness, right? That's a pretty amazing feat. And I think that, I think excellence can inspire more excellence. You can raise the game of other people. And I think President Bukele has done that for other leaders. I think somebody like President Bukele is just a once in 500 year type leader. It's hard to get that right mix all right into a guy who could articulate and have charisma and the right looks and the right oratory powers. But there are some that are close, they're okay, they're better than most, right? And I think he'll up the game of those that aren't quite like king level, philosopher king level, but he'll inspire some to aim for that at least, and then they'll lift up some more of their population. And I think You're already seeing it through Latin America, right? He's inspired so many leaders throughout Latin America because they want to be like him. They want to be popular like him. They want to get it right like him. So he's going, like, there will be copycats. And yeah, sure, the copycats probably won't be as good as the real thing, but it will start to trickle through and you'll get a critical mass around the world. That will be the consciousness raising.
Yeah, I think there'll be a critical mass of people who have the wherewithal to opt out. So when you have a majority of the population can simply say no, because I've got unconfiscatable wealth. I have all the wealth I'll ever need because fiat money has crashed. Even my 10 Bitcoin, 5 Bitcoin, even 1 Bitcoin gives me all the wealth I'll need. And I'm simply opting out. I'm not going to pay taxes. I'm not going to vote. I'm not going to do anything you ask me to do at all. I'm not completely opting out. If you have critical mass of people do this, then the institutional abuse that we're all suffering through collapses.
Yeah, and I think too, in terms of like what you're saying, the critical mass and just the 20%. I mean, I was reading, I think, aren't Americans the largest number of highest population of people that own Bitcoin live in America? So maybe not all of them understand it yet, but I think they could.
I think maybe it might be the case that the largest number of KYC'd Bitcoin holders live in America. I'm not sure that we don't know. There's a lot of non-KYC Bitcoin out there from 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Certainly since KYC exchanges came on board, Americans have bought there. But, there was massive amounts of mining, huge amounts of mining throughout Eastern Europe back in the early days in 2009, 10, 11, 12. 13, 14, there were a lot of Eastern European miners, and that's because they were using subsidized gas prices from Russia. So, of course, that doesn't exist anymore over there. But they had very cheap gas prices, natural gas prices. So they were dominant miners back in the early days. And then the Chinese miners came on, and they were getting free electricity prices through some corruption, but they have massive amounts of Bitcoin that was, no KYC. They mined it into existence and they held on to it. You could see that the Chinese miners never really dumped en masse. So we don't know who owns it. We don't know. Americans like to think they won World War II. They won all the wars. They beat everybody. They're the king of everything. But and of course they probably say we own everything, but. Certainly the products like the ETFs and all the stuff bought on exchanges that has been KYC'd, I would say probably the United States, US citizens own the most.
Yeah, but you say this, with the question, you reveal something interesting here. You're saying, I hear the highest concentration of Bitcoin owners is in the United States, but we're heading into a world where borders are becoming superfluous, where the nation state itself is being reinvented and challenged and probably collapsing. So national borders are becoming less of a factor. The Bitcoin community, it's an international community, and it's a very agile and movable center of gravity. It's like, I'm always fascinated by flocks of starlings who they fly in these groups where they're thousands at a time, and there's through the sky in these patterns called murmurations, where it's ebbing and flowing like an ocean. And they don't seem to bump into each other. They seem to all be knowing, like when we watch a drone exhibit of 1,000 drones all working in concert, it's incredible technology, and it took 1,000 years to get there. But these starlings have been doing it for, quite a long time. And so this is kind of the Bitcoin community. We're all sovereign unto ourselves, but we can pick and choose who we fly with at any moment. We can fly in this part of the murmuration, that part of the murmuration, or not part of the murmuration. And that murmuration will continue based on the ebbs and flows of Bitcoin mentality and Bitcoin psychology and Bitcoin philosophy, which is all connected electronically anyway. So it's just a matter of going with the flow, literally. And nation state borders will become increasingly meaningless. I mean, in the US, they've given up on their borders anyway. And they've said, we don't really have a border. And they're just allowing really a borderless country to exist. And that's having, pluses and minuses, right? It's putting a tremendous strain on the infrastructure, and then that part of the economy will collapse. But it also will decapitalize and demonetize the ruling elites, who will have nobody to rule over, because they've, as Johnny Cash would say, you can have my pile of dirt. I'm the king of my, pile of dirt, essentially, will be the new national anthem in the United States.
Yeah, and I think when they try to like force CBDCs down everywhere, especially in America, that's when more Americans will go, bye, I'm out. I'm getting into Bitcoin. I have a cold wallet or whatever. I think that'll push a lot of people into this, like either physically leaving America or even just digitally leaving, because they're like,
I don't think the US will do a CBDC.
You don't?
No. They'll lose the euro areas, the second tier, of the fiat, the dollar is a Bitcoin equivalent. And then all the other currencies are the shit coins, right? So the dollar is the king of shit coins, and there's no reason for them to give up as it is right now. I think they would rather have banks issue their own stable coins, for example. That will be a better projection of power. I don't think, they would, their US banks are force multipliers, right? Power multipliers across the world. So if you remove the power of the banks to print money, then it's just the government. And I think, therefore, the illusion that President Bukele talks about that is so important to the U.S. might and the power of the dollar is destroyed if you just remove the middleman, which are the banks, Wall Street. So if you take it from them and give it to Jerome Powell, then you're seeing the Wizard of Oz right behind it. And I think it would remove the power of the dollar. So I think the U.S., I think they're way too clever to do that. I don't think they would do that. But Euro, yeah, the Eurozone, they'll do a CBDC, but they're more, that's part of their culture anyway as well. Like the populations across most of Europe are more socialist. They expect all these government services. They don't mind surveillance, where the US is not even in our culture. Like we don't, we don't tolerate surveillance on the sort of, in government interference in our personal lives to the extent that Europeans do.
All right. So now we're coming up on the halving.
Yes.
How do you think the halving will impact? Obviously, we've just hit a new all-time high of what it was a couple of days ago, 73,900 or whatever. How do you think the halving will impact not just the price of Bitcoin, but also all of the other things we're talking about, the sovereignty of not just El Salvador, but Bitcoin holders? How will it impact orange pilling more people? Do you think it'll impact more, as you were talking about, Stacy, more Bukele type leaders to emerge? What do you think the halving is going to do?
Well, so far, the previous patterns of the past 4 epochs of Bitcoin have been shattered, right? So we've never hit an all-time new high before the halving. So we've already done that. So I would imagine it would continue to surprise. So we don't know. We don't know. Hopefully markets aren't predictable, right? You can't predict markets, is what Max Kaiser will always say. And so, we don't know what's going to happen, but I think we're definitely in a new epoch. Like every epoch, the 4 that existed so far in Bitcoin, they bring in a new crowd. Right at the end of this latest one, we have the ETFs, right? And that's bringing in retail. So they might perhaps define the next 4 years before the next halving. And we don't know what that will bring, what Wall Street will bring to it. But we're about to see, everybody. Okay, so, the previous layer 1 monies we've had in the world are US Treasuries, and we know all the shenanigans, the illusion of that. We don't know how much. It's the audit the Fed. We don't know how much money they have. And then we had gold, and we don't know how much gold exists in Fort Knox. So now we have an audible layer 1 money, perfect global reserve currency type money. and everybody in the world can audit it and know how much is there and who's printing what and how much is being mined. So, you know, a lot of the people who believed in the dollar or believed in gold and still believe in gold, like Peter Schiff this past week was like, yeah, do I wish I had bought some Bitcoin when like Max told me about it at $1 and $10 and $100? Yeah, sure, yeah, of course. But I would have been untrue to myself, right? Because I wouldn't have really believed in it, right? So, yeah. But the people like him that continue to hold on to gold, they always hope that, well, you know, like the controllers of the world, the illusionists, the Wizard of Oz of the global control system, they destroyed the value of gold, right, through all these machinations of holding all the gold, and they get to print paper gold and smash the price of gold and you know, psyops and gaslight people who hold gold and hope to be free and free of the money printing through holding gold. So they're hoping that Wall Street will do the same for Bitcoin. So Max has some theories on that, but I think this will be the epoch. We'll see we've reached this point much faster in the whole cycle of it's only 15 years old, Bitcoin, right? So we're already at the point where Wall Street it's like a head-on fight with Wall Street, whether or not they could actually control the price, the perception, the psychology of participants, the holders of Bitcoin.
Demand shock meets supply shock. So you're going to have those two colliding in a spectacular fireworks of price appreciation. The demand for Bitcoin is already outstripping daily supply by a huge factor, 10 or 20x. That is going to double in another couple of weeks. So the projection is that within 6 months, there won't be any Bitcoin around to buy for ETFs. Not at these prices, and not maybe even at 150 or 200,000. You're gonna have to go higher to find any sellers. There's just no sellers. And there will be a time when nobody accepts fiat money at all for Bitcoin. You will not be able to swap your fiat money for Bitcoin. No one will take dollars for Bitcoin. That will be a time that comes soon. And you have one other thing I was going to say about this, the shocks that are coming, but it's
what about the thought that, you know, the hopes, Peter Schiff's one last hope is that Wall Street can do to Bitcoin what it did to gold, that it can psyops and gaslight and destroy the hope of Bitcoiners, because actually Michael Saylor owns that website, right? Hope.com, and it's all about Bitcoin. So he's hoping, Peter Schiff's one last stand is that Wall Street can destroy all the optimism and hope and the renaissance going on in this part of the world.
Right. Well, Bitcoin is uniquely decentralized and getting more so. Even though ETFs are not adding to centralization, the underlying node proliferation and et cetera would lead to greater decentralization. Whereas gold is, relative to Bitcoin, very centralized. It is very centralized. And on the bullion banks, or who owns the most stockpiles of gold, and where gold is mined. So it's compared to Bitcoin, it's very centralized. So it's a lot easier to manipulate, a lot easier to control. But Bitcoin is truly decentralized. And so it's out of anyone's reach, any group of folks, to control it. They can temporarily throw a roadblock in front of it. But like I've also said for many years, that Bitcoin was designed to be attacked, because if you attack it, it just means that the miners and the people throwing computational power at it, their dedication to it goes up, which increases security and therefore, you know, increases price. It's designed to be attacked. The more you attack it, the higher the price goes anyway. So it's just it's going to be. What I was going to say is that the speculative attack is really just now coming into people's consciousness. So George Soros did this back in the early 90s against the Bank of England. You know, he's borrowing money from the Bank of England to attack the Bank of England. and he broke the Bank of England, and he made $1 billion in a week. And it was considered a fantastic financial play. But this is what Michael Saylor's doing right now. He's borrowing at less than 1%, buying Bitcoin that's compounding at 70% a year, right? So you're borrowing at under 1% to buy something that's compounding at 70% a year, and you can keep doing it. There's nothing stopping him. We can just because the collateral value keeps going up, and he can dilute his shareholders forever. No one's going to stop him from diluting the shares because he's buying Bitcoin with the new money. It makes the shares that they have, even though it's less of a percentage ownership of that company, the value of those shares are going exponentially higher. So you may have had 10% of MicroStrategy worth $1 million, but now you've got 1% of MicroStrategy, but it's worth 20 million because he owns that much more Bitcoin. And now I own 1/10 of 1%, and it's worth 40 million because Bitcoin keeps going up and he keeps collateral. That's a speculative attack. That's what happens. So now El Salvador, I would posit, is doing something similar. And so other companies, other countries are going to be catching on to this, the playbook of MicroStrategy, that as long as you can borrow money and as long as there's fiat money taken for Bitcoin, you can engage in this perpetual motion money machine. And another thing I like to say is Bitcoin has no top because fiat money has no bottom. Priced in fiat money, Bitcoin goes to infinity because all fiat money will be worthless against Bitcoin. Priced in gold, Bitcoin will continue to do very well against gold, but it'll never go to infinity against gold. Gold will always be worth something. Someone will use it as a doorstop or something, like it'll have some use, whereas fiat money has no use at all. It's just paper. Or, other commodities, certainly against Bitcoin, property markets, you'd be like, I'll buy the island of Manhattan, was sold, it was bought, the legend has it for like $59.
Right.
That we're going to head back to that. We're heading back to that. It'll be, you can buy the island of Manhattan for the equivalent, of 1 Bitcoin at some point, 59 Bitcoins, because it'll be that much higher and no one will want, look, commercial real estate's already collapsing all over the world in the US. And a lot of that, I would say, has to do with it being demonetized by Bitcoin. The monetary premium of real estate as an investment, as a store of value, is being undermined or demonetized by Bitcoin. So you see people selling their gold ETFs, they're buying Bitcoin ETFs. They're going to be selling their REITs, the real estate investment trusts. They'll be buying Bitcoin. They're going to sell their S&P 500 ETFs, the SPX. They'll be selling those and buying Bitcoin ETFs. So there's a huge changing of the guard, and the money is flowing into Bitcoin. And so this is all. And so the halving. I know what I was going to say. The halving is one of many metrics that one can look at and extrapolate from and draw a conclusion. I would say, for me, I look at sentiment. So right now, the sentiment toward Bitcoin is still fairly lukewarm, as opposed to, let's say, 2017, where every magazine in the world had a cover story about insta-billionaires on crypto and Bitcoin. And we're not anywhere near that level of mania yet. When you see stories on ABC, CBS, NBC about this homeless man sold his last, stick of firewood to buy Bitcoin, like those kinds of wacky stories. And so sentiment is at that extreme. That we'll be hitting a cycle peak. The sentiment will be very high, right? But we're not even halfway there yet. We're in the second or third inning of sentiment getting stretched to the point where, those crazy stories, this mother of 3 sold her baby, buy more Bitcoin or something, that'll be the story. It'll be shocking, but it'll be the height of the, P. Diddy gave up his various habits
For Bitcoin. Well, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. If Bitcoin fixes it,
So this is interesting, though, that when the day comes when fiat, people aren't going to be able to use fiat to buy Bitcoin, then you think we'll just go to, I'll sell you my house for 2 Bitcoin or whatever. We're just going to go to that.
It's hyper-Bitcoinization. So everything is in Bitcoin. Everything is priced in Bitcoin, and it's a medium of exchange and a store of value. So you get paid in Bitcoin, everything, you go to the supermarket, it's all priced in Bitcoin. Everything's in Bitcoin, hyper-Bitcoinization. Whereas El Salvador is kind of like heading in that direction as well, right? So it's becoming a circular economy, they call it. In El Zonte, it's a circular economy. People are paid in Bitcoin, we use Bitcoin, and we store our wealth in Bitcoin. So that will gravitate out.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's. I mean, I've talked to several people here in not just El Zonte, but in El Salvador that are starting like they're getting paid in Bitcoin for their job. They're paying their electric bill in Bitcoin, their rent, their car. They're like a lot of the Bitcoiners I talk to down here, a lot of them are 80, 90% Bitcoin in terms of their daily life and expenses. There's still a lot of areas where you still just need cash. You can't even use cards.
Right.
So they use some cash for that, but it's I've even seen it just in when I first came to El Tunco in June. There was a handful of places that accepted it, and now there's way more. There's more restaurants that take it. There's more stores that take it. I've seen little people selling bracelets and stuff on the street. I saw there's two guys now that have a little accept Bitcoin sign.
Right. The
gym I work out there takes Bitcoin. And now when I say, do you accept Bitcoin? They respond with, if they don't, they say, not yet.
Right.
They don't just go, huh, what's Bitcoin? They go, not yet. Like someone's working on it somewhere. But all right, so that's really interesting with the halving and let me throw this one in there too. Because like you say, Bitcoin is built to handle attacks because that happened 3 years ago when it hit its all-time high. Then some people, I think, in my opinion, were intentionally trying to say, oh, it's bad for this or that, the environment to bring the price down. And then what if there is so we have the halving, the price is going up. It's the summer, let's say, Bitcoin's at 150,000 or more. And then there's like a huge economic collapse in the States because America's headed for a nosedive. What do you think that would do to the short-term and the long-term price of Bitcoin? If Bitcoin is at that level of 150 or more?
It's going up forever, Laura.
What's going to happen to the price?
Yeah. Short-term pullback, and then
the pullbacks are steep, and they happen pretty regularly on these 4-year cycles. But it's higher highs and higher lows, and the annual compounding rate. Anyone that's held it for 4 years, 5 years is in the black. So the thing about Bitcoin is you can hold fiat money, and you're guaranteed no volatility, and you're also guaranteed loss of purchasing power. Or you can own Bitcoin, and you're guaranteed some volatility, and you're also guaranteed increase in purchasing power. So what your swap with the quid pro quo is, you will guarantee to increase your purchasing power against fiat over a 4 to 5 year cycle, guaranteed, mathematically guaranteed, if you're willing to accept some volatility. Or if you don't like volatility, use dollars, but you're also guaranteed to lose purchasing power. It's guaranteed. So this time next year, you'll buy 15% less with your US dollars, but the dollar is still a dollar. There was no volatility in the dollar. It's still a dollar. You can buy 15% less, but it's still, so congratulations, there was no volatility. Oh, by the way, Bitcoin was dropped 23%, 30%, and then now it's up 100%. And the purchasing power was up 100%. But it's volatile, I'm sorry. So that you pick, which would you prefer?
Yeah, I like Bitcoin.
Yeah.
No, because I mean that's the thing, and I asked that question for some people who watch the show or are unsure what to do because they always talk about the price, and that's the thing I always try to explain to people. I say to friends of mine, I go, well, the $1,000 you made 3 years ago is worth less. Yeah. Because it's buying less, because the cost of value at the store, the price of gas, all those things in the States is worse than it's ever been.
Well, if you're really nervous about the volatility of the price, don't look at the volatility of the price. Look at the hashing power, which over time just consistently goes up every year. This has never really been in a bear market. And that's really where the risk takers are, and that's really the market. The volatility comes from the dynamics and the underlying economics of mining. I mean, just like in gold mining or just like in oil drilling, you overextend, you borrow, you do a lot of it, and then the price drops a bit, and now suddenly you're losing, you're not making payments, and then it's a self-feeding cycle, and then there's a crash. So that's like the underlying, they're still based on energy. Bitcoin is energy. It's based on the energy market. And the energy market is still prone to ups and downs based on human psychology and human emotion that's committing or not committing to the energy business. I think that in the case of Bitcoin, we have yet to see a player emerge that will be stunningly positive for both energy and Bitcoin, and that would be in the Middle East. We have yet to see a Saudi Arabia or a Qatar meaningfully commit to Bitcoin. And when we do, we're going to see a very dramatic price rise. And we'll also see a time when oil is priced in Bitcoin. All energy will be priced in Bitcoin. It won't be priced in any dollars or any fiat money because they'll all be completely obsolete. It'll be, you'll be paying X number of Bitcoin for a gallon at the pump. Barrels of oil will be traded in X Bitcoin per barrel. Saudi Arabia will announce we've done X numbers of Bitcoin in oil production last quarter, because Bitcoin and energy are synonymous essentially. Bitcoin is energy. It's energy. Money is energy. It's stored energy. It's stored energy that can take us into the future. That's what money does. It gives you the ability to go into the future with your ability to have to be hopeful about the future, because you can take your money and go into the future, and then you have a linear path forward out of the confused present, because you have a future if you have something that has value in the future. If my gold is great at this. I mean, gold is great, preserves your wealth over time, and fiat money destroys your wealth over time. These different currencies and wealth preservation models have different attributes that are maybe good for over time, or maybe more or less portable, et cetera. But only Bitcoin gives you both time and space, mobility, and through time and space equally, because so that's what makes it unique in that sense. I fucked up that metaphor so badly. But gold gives you gives you time. I'll think of it before long. God damn it, I hate it when I start off with a sentence that seems so promising. And before long, I'm so lost in the swamp that you just it's like that show, Lizard Kings or Lizard Monsters.
Yeah.
Go into swamp monsters.
The swamp people or whatever.
People.
whatever.
It's like, it's so deep in the thicket of Nowheresville with this sentence. I can't believe it. There's got to be somebody. Can somebody help me? Hello?
I got it. Well, before we wrap up, I want to like the Craig Wright thing. Whenever something like that pops up, my question is this like a deliberate distraction? It feels very deliberate distraction to me. It feels very, like anytime there's some crazy story like this, it feels like either it's trying to attack Bitcoin, or it's just one of the typical ruling elites put, every time there's some big story that everyone's like going nuts over, I'm like, what list of Epstein pals is being hidden? Like, that's my first question.
No, I think it's just, Australians are kind of like those snake oil salesmen, right, of the South. It's like a Florida man sort of situation. It's just a really, really ill-conceived con that went a little bit too far, right? That it accidentally got too big and was taken too seriously by too many people for too long. And I think, Craig Wright probably just conned this guy, Calvin Ayre, and Calvin Ayre kept pushing him into these media interviews and onto the court, onto the stand in court. And Craig Wright is just too stupid, right? Like he didn't know how to back himself out of this lie. And I mean, that's classic, right? A lie, you spin this huge web, and he's on the stand. And it was quite humiliating, right? It wasn't even, there was no sense at all. Like, he wasn't even remotely Satoshi Nakamoto. And that's why Judge Mellor, in the case in the UK, he was immediately like, apparently it was extraordinarily rare for a judge to rule from the bench like this, to just say, okay, I'm going to go write my opinion, and it's going to take me a while. I don't know how long it's going to take, but I will tell you, this guy is not Satoshi Nakamoto.
Yeah.
You're like, you could see.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, the court. Yeah. It's like he got rid of he rug pulled the cliffhanger. It was like, by the way, this guy's not Satoshi Nakamoto, and the lawyers, like the COPA lawyers, like they were all shocked. They were like, oh my God, like, wow, we weren't expecting this. Like, I mean, it was so obvious he had to say that, right? Because it's a joke, but it is like a Dumb and Dumber or, one of these Steve Martin sort of comedy where he's playing a scoundrel, a dirty, rotten scoundrel or something like that. So it's just really absurd. It's surrealist comedy. And the surreal thing about it is that it was so obvious, as transparent as our holdings, right? You could see it on the blockchain. Everybody could see that the guy was not Satoshi Nakamoto for the longest time. And yet for some reason, like people in the media or judges or the court system kept taking it seriously and entertaining this guy's delusions.
Well, it goes back to the hard fork days of 2017. Okay, so the fork wars. And during the fork wars, you had two people emerge from that, Roger Ver, Craig Wright. And their argument was that the white paper, it says Bitcoin is a cash. It's cash. It's not a store of value. It's cash. It's for payments. And so they hard forked. They created Bitcoin Cash. They created Bitcoin Satoshi Vision. And so, so now, 8 years later, Michael Saylor, just this past week, said that I'm not going to spend a part of the building I own in Manhattan to buy a cup of coffee. Right? It's not cash. It's not payments. It's primarily a store of value. As a store of value, it's worth 100 trillion. As a payments rail, it's worth 1 trillion. Right? It took from 2017 to today 7 years, 7.5 years to sort this all out. It's fitting that the Craig Wright saga ended on this moment when finally people understand that the word cash, as it was written by Satoshi, he means money, not fiat money. And Satoshi himself said, I know how to program. I'm not great at writing actual words. And I wrote the white paper after I wrote the protocol, the software. And so you can't rely on the written word of the white paper. You have to look at the code. And the code says it's a store of value. It's not a medium of exchange like Ver and Wright built their whole post-2017 world upon. In the case of Craig Wright, there's a guy, Calvin Ayre, who is the puppet master behind Craig Wright. And he just quit Twitter today or yesterday because the game is over. The con has been revealed. So he's off. He's checked out. There's no more lemon juice to squeeze from this lemon. In the case of Calvin, my contention has always been that he's like a Lee Harvey Oswald. He is a patsy. He never really knew himself what was going on. This guy, Calvin Ayre, found a perfect idiot savant who's almost all idiot and no savant, right? Who would go in front of groups of people and say that he is Satoshi and that this fucking piece of shit is the real Bitcoin. And do it with a straight face. You can't do that and it's beyond just being a good actor. You have to be mentally disturbed, of which clearly this guy is, right? And so Calvin found the perfect patsy for his scam. And the only thing keeping that coin going was wash trading, epic amounts of wash trading. He's trading with himself to keep look like there's some action there. There's no action there. And so actually, what'll be interesting is that Calvin Wright has now been referred for criminal prosecution. He may actually go to jail, like a Sam Bankman-Fried type, and he's criminally insane. If somebody else, like let's say the CIA or the FBI caught Calvin Wright at the right time, they could have turned him into one of these guys who commits a massive crime, and then they blame terrorists on it. That the FBI likes to set people up in these terrorist things, right? He could have been one of those guys. But instead, Calvin Ayre found him and turned him into this patsy for some incredible scam called BSV. And
it's it's like another Steve Martin film is Bowfinger. Right? It's like the Eddie Murphy's brother character. It's like, go do this. And he's like, run across the highway in the traffic. And he's like, okay, and runs across the traffic. And so he did the equivalent of running out across, the 405 freeway in Los Angeles. That's him on the stand.
Yeah. I think it's a testament to how kind of gullible and dumb the media, and shows you how much the media doesn't understand. Because if you understand Bitcoin, even on a cursory level, you know that it was created by a person or person who are highly intelligent.
Yeah.
So then to have this guy be like, oh, I'm Satoshi, you're like, there's no way.
I was on this show. What's the guy's name? Bet Davis. He's this real smoothie in Florida.
Yeah.
Patrick Bet Davis.
Yeah, Patrick Bet Davis.
I was on a show like 4 or 5 years ago. And at that, Bitcoin was like 8,000 or something. And so he's obsessed about Craig Wright. He's like, well, what about Craig Wright? He says he's Satoshi. I'm like, you asked me that because I'm an expert. I'm telling you, as an expert, he's not Satoshi, and don't even talk about it. It's a waste of time. Look at this thing at 8,000. Of course, you would have none of it. Then when it was at 40, 50, 60,000, he's got Michael Saylor on, and it's like, oh, I get it. It's really great because oh, well, he fucked that up. Patrick Bet Davis, look at that interview I did with him. It's like, I'm struggling to dude.
Yeah, but
wake the fuck up.
But one thing I have to say is, importantly, I hope he is referred for criminal prosecution because they did terrorize Peter McCormack and Hodl Knott. So
Sure.
they did cause genuine harm. It wasn't, on the one hand, we are making fun of him and saying it's like wacky and funny and he'll have his comeuppance, but that justice must be served.
It brings up another point, which is that only the people living in those areas, like in the UK and in Europe, were vulnerable to a legal system that allowed this freak to go after them for libel. Nobody in the US, I said the same thing these people said about him at the time, but he couldn't come after me because First Amendment protects me. They don't have it the UK, here's a factoid, which your listeners will be shocked to find out, that in the UK, there is no codified, written down constitution.
Really?
They have a bunch of the documents that they refer to and interpret the law on the fly continuously. There is no actual written codified constitution in the United Kingdom. And their legal system is something that, depending on who's suing who, can be changed on the fly as well. It's
the most important thing is the burden of proof in the cases in the UK are a lot different, especially with libel. The burden of proof. If I say you've libeled me and I take you to court for libeling me, you have to prove you didn't libel me. In the United States, obviously, I would have to prove you libeled me. So it's a different standard. But yeah, so hopefully justice will be served. And nevertheless, we're Bitcoin country. We've proven we're Bitcoin country. We continue to astound the world. And in a way, it's good that we're nonstop. Everybody underestimates us because we over deliver.
That's how you win.
Yeah.
That's how you win in any sport. That's how you win in anything, when people underestimate you. And once you realize, oh, they underestimate me. Oh, they think then you have a tactical advantage. I don't care what it is, tennis, sports, business. I don't care what it is. When somebody underestimates you, you have a tactical advantage because they are not going to do their proper It's like I watch a lot of sports. You scout the other team, you check them repeatedly. But if they think, this team's small and easy, they don't scout you. Yeah. And then they don't realize that, I'll use basketball as an example, that you've got they're like, they're too short. Yeah. Well, all of our guys shoot 60% from the 3-point line. This is a tactical advantage, and Bukele knows this. He knows he's got this little country that has crypto. He's got it. He's got superhuman strength here. It's like he knows everyone's looking at him like he's Clark Kent, and he's like, nope, I'm Superman, and he's crushing people. It's amazing.
It's nonstop. It's like the media is constantly like Peter Schiff, and he is like Bitcoin, right? It's like they keep walking straight into his sledgehammer of awesome, right? They just constantly say things that are about to be disproven, and everybody knows.
I like Peter Schiff's argument. He said, I may have been too stupid to buy Bitcoin at $10, but the fact is that if I had bought it, I'm stupid enough to have sold it at $11. That was his argument. He said, I'm so stupid that I would have sold it anyway. So it's actually better that I didn't ever buy it because I would have had the pain of having sold it because I'm not stupid. I'm not just stupid, I'm very stupid.
That's like,
That's his argument.
that's like, you think I'm stupid? I'm more stupid than you think I am.
Exactly.
So there.
That's his tactical disadvantage. He's a lot stupider than people actually think he is. It hurts him every time. The worst performing money manager of the past 50 years.
And that's the other thing. Part of what comes with the underestimating is stupidity and hubris. That's the arrogance.
Yes.
That's when you know it's like, well, we're the big blah, blah, blah. We're going to be every underdog story. The person, team, whatever that they defeat always is sitting on a throne like, what do you know?
Yeah, but they keep on underestimating when the guys won like 10 Olympic gold medals.
Yeah,
like,
I
he
know.
keeps on winning the gold medal. And you're like, the guy keeps winning. Like, why do you keep setting yourself up to be humiliated? You know he's going to win. Like, I don't understand that. It's like if they had been saying it about Tom Brady or Michael Jordan, like when they were at the top of their game, you're like, you don't bet against that guy, right? Like, don't say it. Don't do it.
Yeah, well, as you say, it's a tactical advantage, and they're exploiting that.
Outstanding. Well, folks, that's our show.
It was really great. I'm sure the sound didn't work, but usually if I feel like there's been a good show, it's almost a guarantee no sound.
There was like a hiss or something.
No
No sound.
No sound on the show. I'm positive. It was too entertaining.
We had that so many times in the old days of Kaiser Report, where we'd be like, wow, that was the best show we ever did.
Yeah.
And they were like,
No
from the sound booth, they would be like, sorry guys, we forgot to press the audio recorder. And like, oh my God.
That's the life of a podcaster. I've had full episodes lost. Like, we interviewed some amazing filmmaker. We're never going to get this interview again. And the whole interview is just, it's like, well, that happened
to, what's his name? Nick Broomfield, the famous documentary filmmaker. I worked with him on a documentary he did called Kurt and Courtney about, Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love. And, but he made that documentary about, Suge Knight. Like they went in to interview Suge Knight, and they went into prison when he was in prison for that murder or something. And the camera guy suddenly, for some reason, got so scared that the camera just pointed up at the sky for like 10 minutes. He had this interview with Suge Knight, and there's no video at all of Suge. It's just the audio. And Nick has his posh accent. He's like, and we got into prison, and for some reason, the camera guy decided to point it at the ground or something like that.
Yeah. Another one is, as a comedian, that one with the camera shaking. The cameraman's laughing.
Yeah.
You can't use it, right? You have to be like a little less funny than you could be because this fucking guy can't hold his piss.
Yeah.
Okay, I could be a lot funnier, but like, you look like the kind of guy who's going to start shaking the camera.
I did that. I have to say, I was really bad. I was an associate producer on this series with Rick Mail. I don't know if you know who he is. He was on like The Young Ones, and very funny comedian in the UK. And he was just like ad-libbing constantly. He was just like, he was like manic totally. And he just was like throwing out all these things. It was hard not to laugh. And I did like 2 or 3 times. And he'd be like, Stacy, it's like, why did you just ruin my take? And I'm like, I don't know. I have to get out of the room. This is horrible.
Yeah.
Like, how do you not laugh when it's something super funny?
You need to have a nail stuck in.
It's guaranteed. We were always at stand-up comics, and we were like, well, we need to make a good tape of ourselves to send out. And we'd set up a camera, Saturday night, packed house, you'd crush, and there'd be a waitress's head in front of it, or someone would hit it, or you'd hear the other comics and the mic ripping you or something, and you're like, you assholes, that was my tape.
Matt Damon told a funny story just recently about Robin Williams and Good Will Hunting. And Robin Williams, Max had worked with him in the comedy scene back in the 70s in New York, or encountered him certainly. And he came on to the set. They were doing a scene where he started to ad-lib Robin Williams. And, so he's the professor and he's speaking to Matt Damon, and he started to talk about his wife. He misses his wife, especially her farts. Like, he started to say that Matt Damon's just like trying not to laugh, and he's just like sitting there like, like he's trying not to break character.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is in the movie. That's a great scene in the movie.
Yeah, that was totally ad-libbed.
You can tell there's a lot of great. You can tell the last line of the movie. I know was when I watched it. I was a comic. I watched the last line when he gets the note and he goes and you hear Matt Damon's voice. He said, "I had to go see about a girl." And Robin Williams goes, "Son of a bitch, stole my line." I was like, "That's only a comic with only a comic that wasn't in the script. Only a comic would think he stole my line." Well, all right, folks, that's our show. Please support what we're doing here. Go to swanbitcoin.com/orangepill. You get a free $10 for signing up. It's Bitcoin only over at Swan. And like, share, subscribe. All of our ats are scrolling below, at Orange Pill Pod, at Max Kaiser, at Stacy Herbert, and at Graham Elwood. Those are all great ways to support what we're doing. And, we're doing 3 shows a week and we're dropping clips and all that. So stack sats, and Craig Wright's not Satoshi.